Keep in mind the age of your target audience. If you're writing middle grade fiction, you want to entertain young people with creepy, scary stories, not scare them completely. An example of this is Bob's The Girl Who Cried Monster, in which a girl finds out that a librarian is really a monster but no one believes her. In the original manuscript, the librarian had eaten a child.
Whoa, no fainting!
However, the editors felt that this went a little bit too far. So in the next draft, the librarian kept a bowl of live turtles on his desk and occasionally ate one whole. It was a successful substitute, as it was still creepy, but no children died, so it wasn't too extreme. The next part will be pay attention to the vocabulary level of your readers or your audience. The difference between the reading ability of a 9-year-old and a 15-year-old is often, as you know, quite huge. And you need to write in a way that kids will find your story both interesting and accessible. If you choose a young adult horror, you need to decide how far you're willing to go with language, violence and sex. And if you're having trouble figuring out how hard your reading is, just visit readable.com. This site will tell you for what kind of grade your writing is.
The closer you get to the character, the better your scares will be and the better your story will be. That's the whole secret to being scary. That's it in one sentence.
When writing horror books, it is best to tell the story from a main character's point of view, because being close to the character's experience makes the fear all the more real. Readers should identify with the protagonist and experience the horror as their own. One advantage of writing from the main character point of view is the opportunity to express their thoughts and feelings in the first person. But please, don't overdo it. You must maintain a balance between what your character observes, feels and physically does. If there's too much thinking in a book, it slows the book down. But writing in the first person can be challenging, you know? Especially if you want to switch between multiple characters' experiences. But one way to do is to keep the first person perspective for one character and then switch to third person when dealing with another. For example, the main character speaks of my gloves rather than her gloves, which brings the reader closer to the frightening encounter with a ghost in a cemetery. Try to hook readers right at the beginning. The Goosebumps novels begin with a fast-paced, action-packed opening that immediately piques children's interest and introduces them to most of the main characters. The first few pages quickly lay out the problem the protagonist faces, giving the young readers a clear idea of what the book will be about. More so than in books for adults. So R.L Stine uses the first chapter of, for example, I'm Slappy's evil twin as a case study for an effective hook. At the end of the chapter, the main characters are introduced, they are set in place and time, and they are going about an activity. There's also a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter that includes a plot line that will come into play later.
It's superb.
To scare your readers, you need to think about back to your own childhood fears and use them to your advantage. Try to remember what scared you as a child. The creepy basement, the dark garage, or the office of one of your parents. And try to draw on that sense of panic when setting up the scene. How did you feel when you were down there in the basement and the lights broke down and you were lost in a silent, dark room? It's also effective to take normal familiar places and turn them into scary places. Instead of using tired horror tropes like a haunted European castle, take normal neighborhoods, good and backyards. This way most people can identify with the setting and empathize with what's happening. Give them a sense of helplessness and vulnerability. The secret of suspense is the unknown. You need to write scenes where the character doesn't know something. What's banging on the door? What's scratching at the ceiling? Maybe a protagonist is lost and it's dark outside. Whichever way you choose to build suspense, you need to get inside the character's head and detail everything they see. Hear, smell, taste and feel. Avoid first person phrases like, I was in total panic. Instead, talk about sensations and describe them very slowly. You build tension by slowing the pace of the action at certain moments. Such as when something bad is about to happen. Describe a place with many sensations. If a group of children is lost in the woods, make the place as real as possible. What do they hear? What do they see? sensory impressions are great for putting your readers in the scene and ultimately make your narrative more frightening. In short, try to tap in your own childhood fears. Make ordinary places scary, build suspense, or at least try, and use sensory details to set the scene.
If I can turn a sponge, a little tiny sponge, into a monster, you can take anything. Just take anything and give it power, make it terrible, have it do horrible things.
A monster can be anything beyond control, and perhaps that is why children identify so easily with monsters. Children constantly struggle with fear and anxiety, but usually suppresses these angry feelings. A monster will stop at nothing to terrorize the neighborhood, and this drive for destruction is both scary and familiar to young readers. These impulses. Try to study various horror movies and try to imagine what your monster will look like. You will need to describe your monster in great detail, so think of something that lends itself to vivid sensory detail. So any object can become a monster when you write a horror novel. It Came From Beneath the Sink is an entire novel centered around an evil sponge who brings bad luck to anyone who moves into his house. Don't forget the cursed camera from Say Cheese and Die. In short, understand what makes a monster. Media and for yourself. Inanimate objects can be monsters too. Thanks for watching, that's it for this part, and I hope I see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Bye!